Hunting the Shadows.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there in podcast land. I am your humble host, Dennis Carroll, and this is Hunting the Shadows, episode 35. Have I got a real treat for you all tonight? I have my friend Barry Littleton about to take the stage here with us. We're going to have an interesting night ahead of us. As I told him just a few minutes ago, we're going to ride the strange train tonight, definitely, and we're going to see where that ends up at. And I want to make a quick announcement. You do not want to miss Paranormal Point of View Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. I'm going to go in search of the vampire's grave, okay? The grave of the vampires. So you don't want to miss that. That's going to be very interesting. Plus, we're going to have a lot of others, I think, good surprises for you out there as well. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat room tonight. Philip, Crystal, John, Marcy, the girl in her gong. You're all out there. If I missed anybody, I'll include you in later. Glad to have you all here. Addicted Knowledge, good to have you here. Shinval girl, hello. That's Shenandoah Valley girl there. Okay, yep. And Midwest and all the rest of you guys out there. Appreciate you being here tonight. And it's going to be an interesting evening ahead of us. I'm going to bring Mr. Littleton on here in just a few moments. And what this guy don't know ain't worth talking about, okay? I always enjoy talking to this guy. I love to hear him talk. And he has an infectious laugh. I love to hear it. I love to make him laugh. And he's a great guy. So without further ado, I am going to bring him on the stage here. And we're going to get started. Good evening, sir.
Hello, Dennis. How you doing?
All right. How's everything going, bud?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored and looking forward to this. And hello to everybody in chat too. So thank you.
Yeah. This is gonna be an interesting evening ahead of us. I love the interesting conversations you can get into, definitely, and hopefully we'll do that tonight. I was gonna say that you don't need any introduction. I'll let you introduce yourself for those out there that may not know who you are. You're a legend, but I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself. Okay.
I doubt that. I look kind of smart because it's cyberspace, but that's easy. You know what I mean? I'm Barry Littleton. I'm a contactee, also a psychic and a medium. I was kind of born awake. Things started happening to me as far back as I can remember. And then when I was 7 years old, things really ramped up. And then I had experiences all the way till I was up in my about early 30s. So that's who I am, more or less. I kind of somehow got thrown on Front Street in 2011. I'd had a car accident in 2010. I was on my way to work and I had a little Trans Am, and I actually wound up going through several of the windows, including the T-tops. So I'd taken 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries, and I died on the way to the hospital. And they had brought me back, and then I was in a coma for several weeks. And after that, it took about almost a month to remember who I was, having a clearing out. But during that time, I had a very definite near-death experience and had encountered something we could call angelics during that too, and also loved ones. And then when I
Ah,
regained and cleared out, remembered who I was and everything. When I say I didn't remember who I was, my pattern of decision making eluded me for a while. So for someone like me, that's like everything, But when that came back at it clearing out, so then I had to kind of evaluate my near death experience and the non physical angelics that I saw, along with these experiences, like these extraterrestrial interdimensional beings that I have been dealing
right.
with a lot of my life, and trying to see where they are, because some of them were of a higher frequency too, but there were difference. And after that, I inadvertently got exposed and wound up sitting here talking to Dennis Carroll.
Uh,
It's been
well, I'll
quite
tell you,
a journey, but it's
as
been a blessing.
somebody that's been there, a near-death experience will change you drastically, not only physically sometimes, but spiritually as well, definitely. And
Yes,
you are like me myself. You've been in this a long time. I mean, you had a lot of experiences and a lot. It's just like sort of a cosmic gun has been pointed at you once in a while. Oh, let's get this guy.
yeah,
That's the way it works out that way. But I think, and I said that today on the show, on Jessica's show, did a fantastic show with my friend Jessica today, and I
yes,
said
very
that
cool.
today that I believe we meet people. I believe we meet people, and we people come into our lives for a reason. And I think that's part of our destiny in that respect.
Yeah,
And I think some of these experiences that we have, Barry, we're meant to have, and I think they are what make us us.
yes,
Having had my own near death experience, I actually had sort of a view, saw the angel of death. I'm not going to get into that tonight, but when you experience something like that, it expands your understanding vastly. You know what I mean?
yeah, yes, absolutely. And like a lot of time people ask, they say, "What'd you see on the other side? What happened? What'd you go through? What was your NDE like?" And I say, "Well, it's not the cool stuff you see on TV, if that's what you want to know. But I can say
Hmm.
this: I am fairly aware, and I'm fairly spiritual, and I always try to live my life by the golden rule. But after going through this death process, as far as I went through, and then coming back here now, I can tell you, I greatly, even with all that, I greatly underestimated the impact that our relationships have with each other, and how that's what really goes to the other side with us. So I'll
Yeah,
say that with that, you know what I mean? So when
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
yeah, when you think of things like the panoramic life review that comes at the end of the life process, this makes a difference, how you lived. And
Oh yeah.
this is a school of choices. That's what this place
Hmm.
is. I also do a lot of regression work. I'm a hypnotist. I'll do a past life regressions, extraterrestrial regressions, and earthbound
Hmm.
spirit release and rescue, I guess we could call it. But this is
Got it.
something else. So I learned even more with that. And sometimes the data I've gotten from that doesn't measure up with what some of the belief systems are.
Mhm. We live and learn, but luckily we live. You know what I'm saying? We pick this up as we go along. And I said that today, as a matter of fact, on the show. A lot of these powers that be out there, they realize that knowledge is power and power is knowledge. And it's not. And
Mhm.
I'm saying that not on a big scale, but when it comes to a personal scale, your knowledge is what gives you the power to live a better life if you will let it.
Yes.
And knowledge is very important. The more you learn, the more you pick up in life, the better of a more rounded life you have.
Hmm.
Definitely,
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. I
absolutely.
that brings to mind what um, Daniel Brinkley said during one of his near death experiences, that he was floating out in abyss, in this black abyss, and he felt like he couldn't move because he didn't have the knowledge and the information to do so, to kind of control his will to do it. I think that's a very valid testimony.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that is true, very true. And that's another thing I was going to get into tonight. I think you're interested in time travel as I am. And I know you're a big fan of Doctor Who. I'm a fan as well. My favorite Doctor, by the way, is Tom Baker. I don't know who
Me,
yours is, but my
me too.
favorite's Tom Baker.
Me too. Me too. Question real quick. Who's your
Yeah,
if you have a second? Who's your second?
yeah. How, they what now?
I said, who's your second? Who's your second
Oh,
favorite doctor?
my second.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's so many favorites. I like Patrick Troughton. He was good. I like Patrick
Mhm.
Troughton, and I think probably David Eccleston. I think was good. It's kind of hard to pick. I really second. There were so many good ones.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't watched it in a few years. I haven't really gotten into the last incarnations of the Doctor.
I
But
haven't either. I
those
got to
were the
be
ones.
honest with you.
But yeah, but I came in on Tom Baker. That's where I really came in on. Peter Cushing, of course, was the original Doctor. Peter Cushing in the movies, but he was very laid back, grandfatherly type. But
It wasn't. It wasn't
Tom
William
Baker to
Hartnell.
me. Tom Baker's bigger than life. That's
Oh
to
yeah,
me.
oh yeah. He was that's who I came into also, and he was the best one, longest tenant. And I tell you, some of those stories, as far as some of
Hmm.
the things we're dealing with right
Oh
now,
yeah,
I think are very good. Like for
yeah,
example, Ark in Space. I think that's a really good
hmm
storyline.
yeah.
Anyway,
And I tell you, one of my favorite scenes, Barry. One of my all-time favorite scenes in there was Tom Baker was going somewhere. He's always going somewhere, and he was
Mhm.
going through whatever time kind of line he was in at that time. And he goes to go in the door, and the door on the other side opens up, and he sees himself leaving.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
passes himself in time, and I like the response
That
said,
goes like
"I hate it when that, I hate it when that happens." Yeah.
that. That actually is what leads me to be somewhat obsessed with time technology, time
Uh-huh.
science, and time travel. It's because I
Yeah.
had one of my experiences when I was, again, so much stuff happened to me when I was 7 that I saw
Uh-huh.
somebody and I encountered somebody briefly that, wound up being, I think, was what we could call a doppelganger.
Right.
And it's so odd that I obsessed about it for years. Once the time come that I figured out what this was, I mean, it really kind of, and it's just these things that go with our experiences. I've also had experience with a group of beings that I think are, I don't know what to call them, this. So I stole a term from Star Trek Enterprise called the Temporal Integrity Commission. And those are people that,
Right. Right.
piece of the Federation that monitor the timelines. And I believe
Yeah.
that's what these individuals are. They're not Federation, but there's something else. I think they're more historian like, maybe perhaps. But I think they're also trying to deal with these timeline jumpings and these things happening that right now we're in a prime time for what we call time shifts and time edits to happen. And that happens during times of high solar activity. And the sun's got that little patch right now. It's going crazy. So it's
Well.
these are things to be aware of, that we start seeing the Mandela effect and experiencing the deja vu even more. So
But I have to wonder too, Barry, if some of these doppelganger sightings, where people see themselves, could not be sometime something tied to the timeline, crossing. I call them crossovers. You know, something like that going on. You have to wonder, and we do know that. And being, and for many years, I've done a lot of spiritual research, or ghost hunting, as people call. I like to call it spiritual research. Um,
yeah.
a lot of people see this residual haunting, which is nothing but like a timeline playing over and over and over again. I think a lot of times what we see and experience, we miss attribute to them to something else. Sometimes I think that happens a lot, and I'll have to wonder too. And I'll throw this at you right quick: that some of these so-called UFOs might not be, who knows, vehicles from some far-flung time coming back into our time. They don't necessarily mean they're intergalactic. It could mean something from our future as well. What do you think?
Absolutely, or right here from the inner Earth. But when dealing with that, and actually time travel also, and time ships and things like that, crop
Uh-huh.
circles and a portion of them, these high energy plasma balls, needs to be examined also. That's something I had our friend Jessica,
Uh-huh.
bless her heart, gave her the blind target of those plasma balls that were making that one in Wiltshire. But anyway,
Uh-huh.
some of them, one theory I'd heard, these scientists were saying that they had suspected that some of these crop circles were actually markers for time travelers from the future which would be humanity when we evolve beyond the physical
Oh,
container.
yeah.
And then we can't get
Yeah.
DNA anymore and things of that nature. And they're coming back showing things. And it was a fascinating theory. Can't say that's the only reason for them. It's one that just
No,
should be
but it could
considered.
be one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be one. Here's another thing. If I were going to come back in time and I wanted to really mess with you, I would do something like that. I might leave a crop circle or some kind of weird hieroglyphic for you or something, If I wanted to mess with you a little bit, I would do something like that, To me, that is plausible, That is plausible. They could be having a little fun with us,
Yes,
You
absolutely.
never know.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that trying to figure out when dealing with, you're right, not all these beings have to be from extraterrestrial or even interdimensional. A lot of them can be possibly coming through time.
Yeah.
And that deal said, and we have what I think I talked about before, which is the I had a book here, some of the crypto terrestrials, which is that book by Mac Toonies. And he had a really good, he actually had an odd death just right after he wrote that book. In fact, here it is. But cool cover. But he says the crypto terrestrial hypothesis is that you have these beings that stay right here on Earth, live here on Earth, in mountains, in inner Earth, and they have technology we see all the time. And what they use the decoy of is outer space. Keep us looking out that way instead of realize they're coming from right here on Terra X. So that's just, one of those things that I think is prevalent. And when you start dealing with beings that have a higher conscious and higher technology that are have the ability to manipulate the space-time continuum, all bets are off. All bets are off. And the fact that just speaking logistically, we have very little transparency in the private time sector of time science, time technology. We have very little transparent things like that. Like we've heard about things like Dr. Oh gosh, sorry, I keep wanting to say Lewis Gates. I was just talking about him. Just not Dr. Gates, but this brothers had made the circulating light beams. From the University of Connecticut, Dr. Sorry. Anyway, he's got these. Yeah, do you remember his name?
I can't think of it. I know who you're talking about because I've heard about it, but I can't think of it either. But anyway, go ahead.
If you don't think about Tyson, I see so much of that brother. Oh boy,
yeah,
get him on the brain. Anyway, but the brother had made these circulate using the time theory of circulating light beams, and that it starts dealing with superluminal communication and actually sending data backwards in time also. And when dealing with looking for extraterrestrial civilizations, even we've all heard about SETI, and that's fine, but not very few have heard about OSETI, and that's the optical search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Yeah,
where they're looking for actually things that don't scintillate in space like radio waves, light beams, and things, and bent light and circulating light. It's fascinating when we start looking into stuff like that, but we don't hear unless you watch movies.
I think too, though, you have a lot of mysteries connected with this too. We're finding these screws in million-year-old strata, and they're finding some really weird, strange stuff, digging it up from millions of years ago. That's very strange, very odd too. And what really strikes me, Barry, is strange. We know that you and I both know that interstellar type of travel or any kind of space travel, the vast distances you're dealing with here, the only true way to travel through that is through time and space. And like the wormholes, the portals, whatever name you want to give them, that is the way to go. And definitely, if you were going to travel through time, you would take that corridor as well. That without doubt. And I think that may be what's going on. But here's another thing, and this is really, I've had several paranormal investigators have mentioned this, that they believe that there are certain aspects of our timeline that are being manipulated, some things that are being changed without us really consciously knowing it, but finding out later. And I have seen several instances where that has happened, or seems to have happened, put it that way. it's so very subtle, the way these
Yes,
things are
yes,
carried out.
yes.
But I have to wonder about that. And I think, and you have to wonder too, looking out in a crowd, how many people are really that you see walking around in the crowd are really in our true timeline. You know what I'm saying? And they're not maybe crossovers or visitors. And some of these shadow people that people see, some of these very two-dimensional type things that people see, could be some of that as well. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's I think that when dealing with the aspect of actually time travel itself, it's we have to be really, like, for example, there's things that have scientifically been proved, like what's
Mm-hmm.
called electron diffusion regions, and what those are
Right.
the magnetic fields between the sun and the earth where they joined. They're actually
Mm-hmm.
these doors, these portals that open like every
Right.
few minutes, and they've timed them. I mean, that's something you can scientifically look up. So when you deal with any type of a higher civilization, they're going to be using that for space itself. And they're using these type 3, type 4 civilizations. They're using space itself, the fabric itself,
Right.
as a power source. Something like electron diffuse regions is
Yeah.
massive. Or even to the point of where our friend Jessica, I gave her
Sort of a slingshot effect kind of a thing.
yeah,
They use
yeah.
that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'd given her a target of Jessica, of the weaponized portals of Earth. I'd read a couple of papers from these scientists. They were saying that they were, talking about how way past they are proving portals
Mm-hmm.
exist, as opposed to trying to actually find how to control them, to ultimately
Mm-hmm.
weaponize them. So I gave that to her as a blind target, and she started immediately picking up on the sun, all the stuff on the sun. And it takes us
Mm-hmm.
into another deal when you're dealing with these civilizations that are using stars as like neurons when going from place to place throughout the universe, and realizing
Yeah.
that the mind of God that is the cosmos is like a
Mm-hmm.
brain neuron type of structure. It's really intense. But when you start dealing with star to star, and those, what I'm
Mm-hmm.
convinced, Dennis, are the things, are some of the cold spots, those black spots, they're portals. And when you start looking at the Soho website, you can see those craft, those, some spherical, some cubical, going in and out of those. Some anyone can look at. So when you're dealing with that, and that
Yeah.
automatically starts taking us into time motive force. Same thing that the
Mm-hmm.
Earth has. For those of us that, I just gotta say it, for those of us that don't think the Earth is flat, okay, you have spherical and oval objects that actually create an inertial drag frame underneath, and as that turns, that creates closed time-like curves, and that's where
Mm-hmm.
you can really start gaining access to time travel
Well,
technology.
yeah.
And yeah,
It.
so these are things that
Yeah.
science backs up. That can be proven by how, you remember when the satellites went off once a year, like a minute or
Mm-hmm.
so, the timing of them.
Yeah.
That's that inertial
Mm-hmm.
drag frame that was creating that, and it's what's called
Right.
space-time motive
Yeah.
force.
Space
Those
time
things,
continuum. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's another thought on that too. There. When we're talking about they could be utilizing the stuff that's there, very much like the sailors of old. They knew where the prevailing winds were on the ocean. They used that. That's how they got around the sails and everything. So that would be, it makes sense when you think about that. And
Mhm.
I've said so many times in a lot of my own paranormal studies, the equation of the portals has to be there. It answers so
Mhm.
many questions, in
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
respect. I don't see how it could not be there. Okay, that's the way I look at it, and I think a lot of times these portals can be, of course, manipulated. They can
Mhm.
be either made mechanically, they can be naturally occurring, they can be induced mechanically or through means of machinery or whatever. That would be the way to go. I mean, it makes perfect sense when you think about it. You know?
Mhm. Two things on that. One is somebody like, like there used to be that supposed Anderson Institute that gave a patent. They were trying to elicit for a time generator that was ran by quantum computers. It was quite fascinating. And it wasn't at all what I thought that a time device would have looked like, a time generator would look like. But what you've got is some type of electromagnetic generator. Then they're creating a plasma ball, a plasma sphere. And then you've got these antennas surrounding it and these lasers that fire into the bubble to both retard and advance the time field there. And it's quite fascinating. That led down to when somebody, one of the people that follows some of the stuff I've been doing for a long time, they sent me a message. They do stuff with these high corporate techs and computer stuff system. And they asked me, said, Barry, have you actually seen a quantum computer? That's been years ago. And a few years ago, I was like, actually, no, I haven't. I assumed it looked like something like, I don't know, the Whopper from War Games or who knows, something. But they, when I actually looked at one, and the first one I saw was looked it up, the IBM one. My goodness, if that thing does not look like the time rotator in the console of the TARDIS, does it not?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
it
bizarre.
did. Yeah. Very much like it. And what's very strange about that, Barry, is that these ideas get taken by people and put in and yet they're very close to the real thing. You know what I'm saying? It's very bizarre. And to me, when I think about time, I think about my very favorite time movie is, of course, the old H.G. Wells Time Machine. That was my favorite one. When I was a kid, I watched that. And you got to remember one thing. He was actually, you can say he's moving through time, but time is moving around him. And he didn't actually physically move anywhere. It was time moving around him, and that's the way you got to look at it.
They have something called the Accuberry warp drive. And what that actually does is actually bring space and wrap space around the craft itself for warp. And there's something else called direct holes. And that's similar, where you jump into the hole and then wrap it around it. It's very interesting when you start looking at those type of new warp theories that are out there that people are trying to actually, create devices for and things. But when dealing with, you had mentioned the kind of the people messing with the timelines and this time war, I believe, is happening. I mentioned that these time edits happen during high solar activity, and a really good one that people can kind of see is the one to 9/11. I've mentioned several times in these shows I've been on that 9/11, Manhattan was in the middle of a Hurricane Aaron, and several days, like, air traffic was shut down except for 9/11. It was crystal clear that day. And then people, when I say that, people look at me. I've had some people argue me. One person, I had somebody I knew named Aaron that lived somewhere that way. I lived over that way. I don't know what you're talking about. I said, look it up on NOAA. And then there it is, Hurricane Aaron. And people start saying, I don't remember that. That's a time edit. That's why it's
I remember hearing something about that. Yeah, I remember that. And it's an interesting thing too, Barry, that in certain instances time can drag. And I have run into that many times. People say, oh, I've lost so many minutes, or I gained so many minutes. It can go either way, And when you see something like that happening, that is a definite portal type, energy type thing going on with that. And I think I actually walked through a portal one time. I won't get into the story tonight, but weird things happened in that, and I could feel. I mean, without really any instrumentation, could feel disportantly out of time kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? The time context was not right. You could feel that. You know it when something like that happens, and I think it's got something to do with the way our mind. Time is a man-made thing to a certain extent. You got minutes to count down so many minutes and all that. But I think there is another dimension to time itself, which I think we can pick up on with the human mind in that way. And we're not looking at a watch, kind of thing.
What's cool? See, I can mess with you because you go back, you'll be able to follow me. Okay, so in the original Doctor Who's, even through Tom Baker, all right, when somebody walked into the TARDIS, there was like a small hallway, and then you went into the control room. And people would mention being like feeling dizzy when they walk in there. Oh, I feel strange. It's because they're walking over that temporal threshold when they go in. What changed about in the current Doctor Who is they just open up the door and it's just right there. It wasn't like that before. And when dealing with this, okay, and this will take us a little further, like what is called, I don't want to sound like this broken record, broken record, but the quantum hologram, and when dealing with these black holes, that what actually, I did a lot of work with Rudy Shields, and he was, he's astrophysicist from Harvard and all that, but he did a lot of work with the observatories, and he's not an experiencer like me, but he's a scientist, but he took interest in experiencers. So anyway, he calls them MACOs, magnetically eternally collapsing objects. And what the MACO is actually the mechanism inside the black hole that actually is the recording device, okay? Stores the information. And what happens when something goes into the black hole, there's a perfect copy made on the surface of the black hole. And that's also goes within the MACO. And the MACO kind of goes inside the black hole like the crescent disk. So the inside of the MACO is immediate universe. The outside is all the way to the beginning. And that's what is really the Akashic records. So these are the hard drives of the universe. And the reason why I'm saying this is because he had mentioned to me equations they had that were actually putting MACOs, not just micro MACOs, micro portals, black holes, but also that attached the MACO to our individual molecules in our bodies. And when dealing with that and some of these civilizations I've heard about that were actually melanin dominant extraterrestrials that no one wants to talk about, and people freak out when I bring it up. Should talk about that. Are you kidding me? No one talks about it. That's not enough.
Well,
so anyway, but there's a race of them that is reported to be able to teleport without technology by using these MACOs.
And what you're talking about is manipulation of the molecular structure of things in that respect. And here's an interesting thing you might want to tell everybody listening what TARDIS stands for. Remember that? Time and relative dimensions in space. And so that's why the TARDIS is so much bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. There are like many rooms in the TARDIS. There's a swimming pool in there, I think.
They're diagrams. If anybody goes to my Facebook, type in the TARDIS and Barry Littleton, and I've put some diagrams up that's supposed to be one is the inside of the TARDIS compared to the Enterprise D. The Enterprise D is like a speck compared to this inside of the TARDIS. And Tom Baker's episode of all the Doctor Who's, I think, was the best explanation of what the TARDIS was that he gave to Leela, and also what I've experienced on board these craft. Look, Dennis, I've been on board a craft, and when I actually was in there, just the first room I was in was like the size of a cargo bay, and it was bigger than what I saw in the sky, okay? And let alone the other rooms that were in there. And that gives this real thing. And during that explanation he gives with what transdimensional engineering actually is he takes two boxes, and one of them's bigger, one of them's small. He's like, which one's bigger? And she's like, that one, because obviously is. And he sets it on the console and comes back with the little one. He's like, how about now? And she's like, that one. He goes, but it looks smaller. She said, well, it's because it's farther away. He said, exactly. If you can keep that here and put it there, the big one will fit inside the little one.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And that really is talking about the quantum hologram. When I describe this quantum hologram and how it goes through and everything, and these MACOs operate, and I talk about this a lot, these MACOs operate by conscious waves is what they call them. And the conscious waves are spherical. And we have microtubules throughout our body. We're refined it to the brain for this, the microtubules of the brain, which are spherical.
Oh, yeah.
So we access these hard drives in the universe, aka the Akashic records. We do it through brain waves, through these conscious waves. See, that's why we have to acknowledge that so much of these phenomenons we're dealing with, not just the cryptids, the UFOs, everything. A lot of this, some of it comes from consciousness. And it's hard to accept that.
Yeah, and that is part of what we call manifestation in that respect, And that's what I mentioned on Jessica's show today. A lot of this so-called the dark arts and witchcraft and all that is tied into manifestation techniques. They're trying to manifest what it is they want. They're trying to move it from this point A to point B and bring it into an actual molecular structure of some sort. And I have actually seen, dealing with the demonic, I have actually seen these things, Barry, transcending through this. Okay, kind of like that. And I think they're going from one reality, you might say it. That's the only way I can describe it. From one reality to another, from a spiritual reality to a physical reality. In that respect, it's wild, it's freaky stuff when you think about it.
Yeah, and one of the major ways they're doing it was through the blood and through negative psychokinetic energy. Correct? Negative
Uh-huh.
emotions and hatred is how they really seem to be doing that. I was, my brother is much older than me. He'll be 68 here soon, and
Uh-huh.
he's a musician. He has the ability, just sometimes he has these astral projections. And I've had a lot of experiences, but I'm just not Mr. OBE guy. So I want to have OBEs like him. So I was practicing all these different techniques. And what they
Uh-huh.
started doing was augmented the way that I can see. And I started seeing differently and seeing these shadows, especially in peripheral. People are not
Uh-huh.
unaware that peripheral vision is actually black and white. It doesn't seem like it, but it is. That's why we can often detect spirits and things in that peripheral. I would start seeing these shadows. And eventually I started being able to trace them a little without peripheral. And I saw
Uh-huh.
two different types. One were these little circular ones, and the others were these bigger oval type shaped ones. And then one day I watched one jump on one of my coworkers at a bowling alley I worked in college, and it like attached to the crown and went down to the sex chakra. And this lady, everybody was a bowler that worked there, but of course Barry, I didn't care for it. But she's down there making what they call them a turkey. Like they make like 4 strikes. She was killing it. I was like, "You all right?" I went there. "You all right?" She said, "I don't know, Barry. I think the stinking thinking is just getting to me." This thing was tearing her up. It was feeding. That
Uh-huh.
really, really freaked me out. To where I was back home praying. "Oh, I don't want to see this. I want to see this." That type of thing. And you mentioned
Right.
something on Jessica's show. I was watching it, and you hit several things on several of these shows concerning dark things that I think is really, really imperative. One is you had mentioned something that happens to me, and I talk about this a lot. At 7 years old, I got attacked by a ghost, a disincarnate spirit in the house. And I
Uh-huh.
know now that I'm older, I know that this thing was trying to join with me, and I'm pretty sure it was a deceased person. But Dennis, you have these negative people, these molesters or murderers, whatever, and then they die, they don't cross over, and they turn into something more demonic or something. And this thing was trying to join with me, and it couldn't, so it put the squeeze on me like a bear hug and telepathically told me to get out. Made me very
Uh-huh.
uncomfortable. So in
Got
that
it.
way, it made me want to try to. So I was trying to, I don't want this gift. Try to turn that off and try to make it go away. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But that's what they do. They target kids because you're like a beacon they can see. And most of the time, if they can't join with you and take your power, they're going to actually try
Uh-huh.
to scare you to not using your abilities.
Oh yeah, oh
The
yeah.
major
A
block.
lot
The
of that's
major block.
intimidation. It's intimidation. That's not really is what it basically is. And these things work on that negativity, Barry. That's the way they work. They feed on that, and it's like a weird spiritual perpetual motion machine thing going on. The more
Yeah.
they feed them, the stronger they become. The better it becomes. If you had a perpetual motion machine that would do that, you'd be okay. Okay, but we're dealing with negative energy, and negative energy must subsist on negative energy. That's just the way that seems to go. And I tell people a lot of times, and they look at me like I'm crazy, and I have consulted people all over the world with these things. And I say, well, they work off negativity and acknowledgement.
Mhm.
That's where they get their power at. And I say, if you will take that away from them, you know, if you take that away
Yeah.
from them, you don't feed the beast.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
it makes sense when you think about it, but people can't wrap their head around that. They can't understand that a lot of times. But that's the way
Wow.
you got to go with it.
Yeah. You had
Yeah.
mentioned something else too, something I've seen, and it's not the black eyed children. It's different, but it's when somebody embraces so much evil that their eyes go black, or they have lack
Oh,
of
yeah.
difference
Uh-huh.
between the iris and the pupil.
Uh-huh.
I
I've
went to
seen
high
that.
school. I went to high school with this cat, and I knew his
Uh-huh.
girlfriend. We had all these classes together. He was older, and she kept saying he was this high priest of one of these satanic cults. And the cat was very strange, Dennis. All right, but of course, for some reason, he wanted to come talk to Barry. Of course, great. And it's. I remember we were talking, and he was telling me how when actually he would go into these trances, and he would go to a field. There's like an astral field where there's this tree with a huge tree that was like a cedar with all these holes in it, and the demons were in the holes, and they would attack his astral first, then take his body.
Nice.
And he gets done telling me this, and he walks off. All right, and there are these two gang members that I knew. There was a Rolling 60s Crips, and these brothers are very pumped. They're like maybe on the roids, They're standing there talking to each other, and he just walks between them and just get away and like that and walk through it. They tripped, and they would get it. I think trying to jack him physically, and he turns around and he takes his glasses off, and he's like, after he's been talking this to me, he's like, "Excuse me, but have either of you ever really met Satan?" And his eyes was black, and they put up these cries. No, we seen Smith and Wesson, and these brothers ran out of the room. I'll never forget it. In terms of just someone that has been dealing with this, and it's something I wanted no part of. I'll tell you, it was. What I mean?
I'll tell you, Barry,
that's a long story.
Is definitely what happens when you've got something like that on the inside. Okay, it's going to eventually show up outside. That's just the way that works. And the eyes truly are windows of the soul, without a doubt. That really is. And in that respect, and I have actually, when I was in law enforcement, I've seen this happen. You see sort of this inhuman evil looking back at you, kind of. And the only way I can describe it, just like you said about the eyes going back, it's like the eye of a shark. You ever look in the eye of a shark? It's unemotional. It's dark. Yeah, it's just downright evil. Okay. But and let me tell you this: I have seen a guy that cut up his girlfriend one afternoon. I mean, cut her into pieces. Went home, took a shower, and took a nap. Okay, that's what kind of evil you're dealing with here. These people are so detached emotionally from things. They have no more feeling for you than they would a bug on the ground. Okay, and that's dangerous, very dangerous, and that is a spiritual condition that some of these people get in. They are the most dangerous creatures walking on this planet. Yes. And that's where you get serial killers and stuff like that, That's how that comes about. And they look upon you, Barry. It's like me looking at you, seeing a human being. They don't see you as a human being. They objectify you. They see you as an object or something they can manipulate to hurt and make themselves feel better, or whatever the psychological reason is. They don't look upon you as human. That is downright dangerous, no matter which way you look at it. And that is the one thing. You know what? And I heard somebody. It might have been Patton that said this. Colonel Patton. He said that you must understand in the psychological aspect of war, you can't see that soldier as somebody like you. It's only a soldier. That's the way you got to look at your enemy. In other words, you got to look at him that way in order to take him out.
And
with extreme prejudice, as they say.
Sadly, that right there has created a type of a morphogenic field on this planet that's generated by humanity. And I'm hoping that that's part of this big shift that's really coming, is that is what's really changing. More of us here that give a darn are incarnating here, and the younger ones that have not devoid of soul life memories, like what happens here so much. And that's the beginning of this place changing.
Absolutely. Well, we went out there for a minute. Whenever you get on these kind of subjects, this happens. Okay.
Yeah, and we're
something out there doesn't like it. But I agree with you. And I'll tell you this, Barry, right quick. Okay, when you deal with things with this extreme negativity like that, it has a power of its own in that respect, and it is a very negative, dark power that is hard to deal with, and people don't understand that. You got to deal with it in a certain way, but it has immense power to it. I call it plugging into the demonic, and a lot of these people do that. The evil shaman, the skinwalkers, whatever names you want to call these people, they know how to plug into this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what gives them their absolute power in this respect. And that power we talked about manifestation earlier and all this kind of stuff, it gives them that power. Imagination is a powerful thing too. We know that without a doubt. Be careful what you wish for; you might get it. Kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also the set, like where I'm from, so much Native American blood on the land there that so many things come out of the land, for saturation of the blood and the blood spill, that
Uh,
it's disconcerting, especially if you go down to the houses that are down on the river. There, it was really bad down there. They were all active, and so it's things that I think when we deal with certain lands, that the forces there are so powerful, it's like a little bit of sage doesn't just get rid of what's there. You know what I'm saying? I think people need to be aware of that. And
uh,
sometimes I hear people making these claims, they're into the new age stuff, and I battle demons, I do this and that, and all respect to them. Maybe they go take on some of these shadows we just talked about, but they may not be
uh,
taking on the oval ones, and they're certainly not taking on, in most cases, one of these demons that's billions of years old that wants to take your luminosity and take your
uh,
awareness. They're not dealing, and when that happens, as well as I do, Dennis, you're in for the struggle of your life. It's no
yeah.
joking deal. And if you don't have to mess with it, don't. You know?
Oh yeah. I'll tell you something else. You mentioned blood, and there's a very distinct component in a lot of this stuff. Think about this: if I had you laying on an altar right now, and I'm fixing to sacrifice you, okay, to whatever evil entity I'm worshiping. If I'm about to sacrifice you, you're in a very deep traumatic mode. You're in as much fear as you'll ever be in your life. You can't help that. That is the adrenaline in your blood that I think these things. You got that adrenaline running, and I think that's what these things looking for. There's power in that. You understand? There's power in that spiritual power, you might say. And I think that's why this is such a viable component to so many of these different things. The blood thing going on, without a doubt. I don't. Have you ever? Do you remember back years ago? There used to be a show that was called "Are You Afraid of the Dark?" You remember that? Are you afraid of the
Vaguely.
dark? Well, what it
Vaguely.
was, it was a show about kids, and they would try to sit around and scare each other at a campfire thing, and they would tell stories. Well, one story stuck out with me was called "The Tale of the Dangerous Soup," and what it was, this weird guy is a real weird character. I think his name was Doctor Vleck or something like that, and he had a restaurant, and he had this soup that he would serve people, and people were standing in lines for this. This is the best soup they ever tasted in their life, and he would charge like $100 a bowl for this soup. Okay, and they
Mhm.
come to find out, I'll make a long story short. Come to find out, he had a machine in the back, and he would kidnap people and put them in this machine, and the machine would extract the fear into like a juice, fear juice, and he would put that in the soup, and that's what everybody loved. They got that
Wow.
adrenaline rush thing when they got this soup. And
Uh-huh.
um and you got to look at some of this stuff like that. I think there is a actual spiritual connection because like the Bible says, the blood is the life,
Mhm.
and that's
Mhm.
very true in that aspect. And I think it's not only a physical thing about it, but a spiritual thing as well.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And they're always used to manifest through the blood, ritual, all these things. It's it's definitely a really really dark component to it, and it's just
Yeah.
the amount of, and it's disconcerting how the main powers of this planet are these demonic that just incarnate here like you and I, destroy the biosphere, and why things are so, we're so disconnected from like galactic central right now. You know what I mean? it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's really it's really it's unfortunate, so I'm hoping that
You
things
know,
are changing here.
a lot of times that's why I tell people these things, Barry, are attracted to places of trauma, battlefields, hospitals, cemeteries, morgues, and all that. They're attracted to this. That it's like that trauma, that fear factor, that whatever that spiritual thing putting out is sort of like iron fillings to a magnet kind of a thing
Mhm,
going on.
mhm,
And that's what you will experience in some of these places. And I've had a lot of people tell me this. Oh, I go to the graveyard, see if I can hear Uncle Jim out there, or something. Now, you're not going to usually run into Uncle Jim out there. You're going to run into the demonic. That's where you go. That's what you're going to run into most of the time.
Yes, it's very true. Very true. Since I got you here, something I wanted to ask you, and I haven't really got a chance, is I know that you took an interest in that story I turned you on to that was, for everybody wants to know, it was the book is called The Deadly Haunting, but I think it's Joanne Albrecht, Albrect. But they talked about this demonic presence that was basically following the woman's mother-in-law. And it was a demon that said that she was supposed to be a sacrifice to it from followers like lifetimes before. And she got away, and he's been following and wants her. And the amount of strength that I've heard a lot of demonic encounters, but that one I think was probably the strongest that I've heard to date. And when I say this, the way it was able to break so many things in the house, the way it was communicating constantly in the bathroom on the shower mirror with the steam and the other things, and the way no one could get rid of it. So I just want to know what you thought about that, and what you thought it would take to get rid of a presence like that. Like, I'd say it would take a whole team of people, but just what you thought about that whole encounter, because it was, to me, really an interesting one.
Well, I'll tell you this, Barry. A lot of people, when they think about exorcisms and stuff like that, they think about The Exorcist and Hollywood, the way it goes about it, which is a completely different thing. I mean, that's Hollywood. You got to put that aside. Hollyweird, as I call it. You got to put that aside a little bit and understand that when you do a real exorcism, it's a team of people, and it may go on for months. There's no time limit on what goes on. But let me tell you this: to deal with certain kinds of these entities, you've got to be on a certain spiritual level. Okay, that's why I never went. I have attended exorcisms, but I'm not an exorcist. Okay, I never really felt led to go into that kind of thing. Although I have assisted people with it, I'm not one myself.
Did you see some windows break and that type of? Sorry to interrupt. Did you see like windows break or anything with the psychokinetic energy that strong?
Oh yeah, I have seen energy put out by these things. Oh, definitely, the energy to physically interact with people is the number one sign of possession. People getting scratched and all that. When it goes from the spiritual into the physical, that's what ramps things up 100%. Okay, because then it is getting very dangerous. Not only dangerous in the spiritual connection in that respect, it's spiritual danger to your mind and your soul, or whatever tag you want to put on it. But then it goes into the physical thing. You are also a physical being. You got to remember that. And the 4 different ways I've talked about so many times that the demonic attacks you: physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Because those 4 factors, I call them the 4 gates, are the gates to your soul. They are what you are. That's what makes you you. That makes you a living soul. And that's what they attack. And if you guard those gates well, then you can repel that attack against you. But if one of those gates is left open, it's just like leaving the door on your house open tonight. Who knows what's going to come in? That's not a good idea. And you've got to keep those gates guarded very well. And these things know that. They are very highly intelligent. And here's another thing that Hollywood does, Barry. They sort of come off as the demons kind of being stupid and animalistic and all that. They are not. They are intelligent.
They're
beings.
The most cunning of the cunning,
Massive.
And they are relentless. Dennis, they're relentless.
Oh, yeah. They are. And that's what makes them so downright dangerous. You know?
Like for example, for people like me, I know how to shield myself. So what they'll do, and people, those in your audience that know how to shield yourself, what they do is they start creating these havoc situations, like when they start causing problems at your house, with your spouse, with your friends. They start jumping through them, working through them against you. Then they start messing with like the plumbing in your house. You're in a haunted house. That's one of the first things you can tell. You move into a new house, you're constantly having problems with the plumbing. That's one of the main problems. Then that doesn't work to get you out of there and to make you miserable enough. They jump over into the garage, you get in your car and getting the liquids in your car, start making up your transmission and things that cost you a bunch of money. Okay. And they do all these different things that stress your shields. So for the geek like me, I'll put it in Star Trek terms. You got the Enterprise here or whatever, and you've got like 4 Klingon Romulan warbirds, maybe 6 firing on it, all these different areas. So they're hitting the different vectors of the shields to make these little small cracks in your shields, just enough crack to where they can slip in and they go right for the heart chakra and really cause you problems in terms of they cause all these havocs. And we've all got these petty tyrants in our job, somebody looking for that middle management or something. Those people can make your life miserable. And all these things that they strain your shield. So that's that's an advanced strategy to get to people that know how to protect themselves daily. So we got to be aware of that.
Well, you got to have that balance, Barry. You got to have that balance. You got to have all 4 of these things balanced. And then, and let me say this right quick. I'll tell you, this happened to me. Okay, this kind of, you learn something every time you go out. But I actually ran into the same demon twice that knew me by name in 2 different completely circumstances, 100 miles apart, with different people and everything. I was the only one common denominator in both of the instances. And I said and the demon said to me, this is what he said: "I know you, Dennis. Good to see you again. I'm in the network. I'm in the network." Okay, there's a demonic network. All right, there you go.
I when I cross over earthbound spirits, and like I said, this is done. I do this during a hypnosis because it's a different type. They're inside the energy field, and they're always attached, like the demonic will attach to an area of trauma. If you look up not Maslow, but it shows what actually what traumas store in which body organ. And normally, like a dead person will attach to an organ that's storing a trauma that's similar to something that killed them. Okay, it's just food for thought on that. All right, but So that creates a big problem with that. And so just knowing that actually these things attach in that way. So when actually crossing some of them over, I've had some of them that'll tell me this is not even demonic I'm dealing with. This is like grandma and grandpa didn't cross over, or things that they can't leave their house. This is more people, and cognitive behavioral works on them even better than it works on humans, I think. But I've had a couple of them tell me, you're gonna try to trick me. One of them told me that immediately. You're gonna try to trick me. I said, well, how am I gonna try to trick you? You're gonna try to make me go in that light. I'm not going in that light. I heard about you. You heard about me from who? Someone will, then they get real quiet all of a sudden. Or someone will say, oh, it was the others that were in this body that left before you came. They knew you were coming. So that's when I started realizing,
Well, they have that preternatural knowledge on things that we don't have in that respect. They have more knowledge. Their original name, they were the Watchers. Okay, that was the original name. Their job was to watch everything, and they're still doing that. They know that's their very nature, to watch and to learn. And they have so much knowledge that you and I, Barry, could never have in our single lifetimes. Okay, because they have lived multiple thousands of lifetimes, or however way you want to count it. And that's what makes them so downright dangerous in that respect. But here's the thing you got to think about when it comes to exorcism. Exorcism, the power of exorcism in many aspects, is that these people are all getting together and agreeing on something and presenting a front against this darkness, this entity. And that is where a lot of the strength comes from that. That's why you don't go in alone on something like that. You have people to back you up. It's kind of the wolf pack mentality kind of thing, and the demonic hates that, because the demonic many times will infest with more than one demon spirit. That's the way they work. Legion, I am many, because they know they're going to come up against an exorcism like that, where there's going to be more than one individual. Usually in a true exorcist team, you'll have 3 priests. And that's just, and then you got the support for that. So you've got a whole team working against it. They don't like that because you're not. I'm not saying you outnumber them, but it's like that old saying: there is strength in unity.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
And
I agree.
and I think that's why in our modern age, a lot of these dark forces in this world, and you and I both know they exist. We know that they're in power and they're manipulating and doing things. That's why they want to divide us up, Barry, because once we get together and unify, we are forced to be reckoned with. They don't like that.
Very
Yeah,
true. Very true. And
yeah.
divide and conquer, age-old strategy, and they do that a lot. You know, it's
Divide and conquer.
yeah,
Divide
it's
and conquer.
you know, and the rewriting of narratives and the different ways. Yeah, it's important that people realize the ways that they attack. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's very important. Some of these traumas too, we're born with them, not just from our parents and lineage, but also we
Oh yeah,
bring some of these traumas into our organs from past lives. The way you died your
yeah.
last past life is probably you might have a trauma in one of your organs from that. You know, it's important that
Man.
people know that and how much we're really against it, or what we're up against when we're really dealing
But
with,
you
you know, this
know,
whole thing.
I've seen the demonic go into places, into families, and turn them against each other, or churches, or organizations, or whatever they're at. They turn people immediately against. Why do they do that? Okay, they're dividing them up. They want us to hate each other. Don't you
Hmm.
understand? That's what creates that negativity. They want us to be at odds against each other, because when we unify, when we present a formidable front, they don't like that. That's when we're strongest and they're weakest.
And you've got so many of them that actually manifest and use through our negative intention and our negative thoughts. They can generate enough negative thoughts, they start gaining enough ability to actually use our pineal gland as a wormhole to manifest here. We have to be aware of
Uh,
that too. You know, you're dealing with these beings
yeah.
that are non-corporeal and these different dimensions and the different awareness and the way it comes in different dimensions
Oh,
and universes. Oh yeah, a whole
spiritual
nother
levels.
thing going on.
You're
Mm-hmm.
talking about spiritual levels that you got to get up, and I think they know that these things know that those things exist, Barry, and that we have that capacity as human beings to do that. They don't like that. They hate it. They work against it. I've often said that when you come against these forces, you will pay a price. They will make life bad for you. That's just part of the territory. They'll take a piece out of you every time you come against it. But thank goodness we got a lot of pieces. Okay, we got a lot of
Yeah.
pieces left. But it does take a piece of you. It does take a spiritual toll on you, and it can be a physical toll as well in some aspects.
Yeah.
We know that. That's the way this works. But the other alternative is a lot worse than that, and we don't want to go there. Definitely not.
You know, they use the snowball effect a lot and overwhelm people with that. And it's really really important just be aware. You know, like for example, I had someone attacked me just recently on social media. That's what you take sometimes, and they're going off, and it was a post that was it was like a picture of something that really was a light type of a picture, and they went off about it. And you know,
Mhm.
these dark forces, not just do they use the domino effect and the snowball I just mentioned, but they also it's something about the divine field. They leave clues. They always leave clues. You know, this person starts
Right.
saying that when I click on their profile, and what is it? They've got pictures of them standing with their kids with a big devil-like skull, laughing skull behind them with horns, like at the carnival or something. And what that
Right.
showed me immediately is okay, this individual is
Mhm.
being used by dark forces, and they're laughing at them. They're using the individual and laughing. They don't care. They do not care, and they will use
Hmm.
whoever, whatever, and they get a kick out of it. You know,
Oh yeah.
so it's yeah,
Uh, it's true. It's very true. And they know these things. They know this. They know what makes that. Sometimes I say they know us better than we know ourselves. They know what makes us tick, and they know what our weaknesses are and what our strengths are. So they play on our weaknesses, of course. They want that to work against us in that way. So we have to, like I say, we've got to shore up the gateways. We've got to watch the gates, and make sure that we're, prepared spiritually against these things. Because I feel, and I know you felt this too, and I mentioned that on Jessica's show today. We all, for some reason, I've had a lot of people talk to me about this. We know something big is coming. We know something is coming down the line, whatever it may be. We don't know yet, but it's coming down the line, and we've got to be ready for it. You know, spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally, we need to prepare ourselves for these things that are coming, the things that may be coming upon us in the future. That's what we've got to work on, and we got to work on the unity. We've got to work on that. And the way that you fight these things, Barry, of course, you fight darkness with light. You fight, weakness with strength. You fight, disparity with unity. That's the way these things go. You fight love. You fight hatred with love. And that's why they're using our emotions against us. They're using our mentality against us. We've got to understand the best weapon that they've got is us. And we have to be very careful with that and not let them use us. Like that old saying, you can be your own worst enemy. They definitely know that. And that's why we need to be careful what we do in our future,
So that we're not like cattle being herded, because it sure does feel that way. Being herded by, I put something on today, saying that sometimes you can see some of these people, especially if you can read energy and feel people, even if you can read kinesics, like micro expressions and body language is come in these clusters. You can see how some of these people are just completely demonic, being pulled like they're like Pinocchio. They're liars.
Oh, yeah.
They're on these strings, but these demonics are just playing them like, Gargamel or whatever the puppeteer was. I mean, it's
I've often said it's like, you're in your car and somebody else is driving, you're in the back seat. That's the way these things put you, and you don't want to get in that position. You lose that control over your being. But that's what's so scary. I've had a lot of people that I think their fear is being possessed and all that. You're just not walking down the street one day and bam, you get possessed. It just don't work that way. You have to open the doors to these things. They have to be invited in different ways.
Yeah,
That's where you make the mistake.
Because I know you didn't agree totally with Malachi's statement of what he called the perfectly possessed. But it was so fascinating about when he described that, though, as these individuals that have actually, you have to make a verbal consent, something about intonement. You have to agree to do this, and everything's fine. You get what you want until the body's about to give out, and then you got to pay the fiddler, and you start going to the church and other places trying to get an exorcist. When I hate to say the name, but when I look at somebody like when we used to watch wrestling, I see Vince McMahon. I mean, man, does that cat not look perfectly possessed or what? I mean, that's a perfect deal right there. I swear. So it's things like that, and look at what else he's acquired. It's really and I think people should be aware of that. What really you agreed when these things come to you, you're channeling or whatever, and you really don't know what you're channeling and who it is. It might not be Pleiadians or whoever. It's something demonic asking, trying to get control of your body, and you're consenting to it. Have to be very, very careful. It's kind of like, inviting vampires in. They have to be invited in. Even the black children go along with this. I'll throw something in with the black children too. I saw somebody comment about them over there. My view of them is a little different in terms of, I think that they're a warning. I think they're a warning system from another timeline. And the reason why I say that is because the people that have actually touched them or been around them get sick, and the sickness they describe sounds a lot like radiation poisoning. I think what these individuals come from an Earth timeline that as nuclear war, a devastation, they've seen it, and the radiation has turned their eyes black. But in that way, I've kind of compared them to people laugh, but the garbage pail kids. Back in the 80s, they caused a big, hectic deal because they were supposed to be what? Kids that were survivors of nuclear holocaust.
And another thing, Barry, and I tell people this, I'll mention this, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm old, I have to say it when I think about it, okay? Or I forget it. But I've said this a lot of times, a lot of spiritual research I've done. Things these things are not on our time and space line a lot of times, and we got to understand that. I agree with you completely in that respect. They're not. You can't. We tend to think in our time and line and our space, and we
That
need
is
to
true.
we need to be careful with that because these things may not be a lot of times in our timeline and space. I agree with you.
And I wonder that a lot when people talk about the non-playable characters and things like that. How many? Now I've seen. We also have inorganic beings who have the ability, not just negatives but also positives, to have the ability to at least project to us bodies
Hmm.
and walk around like that. You know what I mean? And
Oh yeah.
interact with us in that way. And that not I guess we could call them avatars, but they're inorganics that have the ability to project conscious things into our minds, into our opticals, and then our own um cognitive dissonance kind of takes over the rest, you know.
Right.
Kind of we're like what when if anyone's really read Carlos Castaneda and read all his books and the women behind it, his teacher would say something. He'd say, you're really a trip. You've got the configuration of what they call a novel. You've got this big energy field, and you should
Uh,
be able to see. And everybody thinks you can see. And he starts laughing, look at it, and say, "But I know you. They don't know you, and I know you can't see."
yeah.
Yeah. And then, like for
Yeah.
example, when one of the guys is
Yeah.
around him, he's jumping on a waterfall and floating around doing things that makes Castaneda lose control of his bowels and excrement, and
No.
they're laughing at him. And then later on, his teacher tells him, "If you could see, you would have saw he wasn't a person jumping on the waterfall. You would have saw he was a ball of energy, but you can't
Right.
see. He was in his
But
dream body."
I have another show called Paranormal Point of View, and that's what I often quote on there is that there are things known and there are things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. It's a lot of times how our perception is, Barry, on these things. And we need to work on our perception sometimes. And let me tell you this right quick, and I know we're kind of going over time here, but let me tell you this right quick. I've had this happen in certain instances when I've been investigating things. I can look down a long hallway and see something at the end of that hallway. I said, "What is that? Is that my eyes playing a trick on me?" Because your eyes can do that. Your brain's always working overtime. You have to be very careful about stuff like that. So I said the one litmus test I used to do, what I would be change my perspective and look at it slightly differently. Then I could tell what it was. And I was just thinking that when you were talking there, we have to change our perspective sometimes to truly understand what it is we're trying to perceive in our minds. That's very important. Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you being here tonight, my friend. This has been a fantastic, fantastic show. I really enjoy. I love talking to you. I love to hear you talk.
I appreciate
And
you having me on, Dennis. It's an honor.
yeah,
I really respect your knowledge. You're like Jessica. You've done so much in the field and have
yeah.
hands-on experience. I really appreciate and respect that. So thank you for having me.
Okay. Tell everybody where they can reach you. You got a YouTube channel. What's the
Yeah,
name of it?
yeah. It's just Barry Littleton. I've actually got a link down there below my name. That's a major event for me. You can use that.
Okay.
It's just on YouTube. It's just Barry Littleton. My website is barrylittleton.com, and there are links there. But YouTube, I do a lot of stuff on Patreon, also on Facebook.
Okay, sounds great, man. I think I've been on there and I've subscribed. Okay, so I'm one of your
Thank you.
subscribers there. Okay, so I appreciate you really coming on here tonight. We're gonna have you back. We'll get into some more stuff. Okay,
Thank you.
definitely. There's a lot we can talk about, and I really appreciate you coming tonight. And let you get back to whatever it is you got to do. And we'll get together again in the future, my friend. You take care. All right.
Take care. Goodbye to the audience too. Thank you.
Adios. Well, that was fantastic. Fantastic fellow there. I love to talk with over there. He is great. And I really appreciate you all being here tonight. I know that I haven't had a chance to do a lot of your comments and stuff. Um, let me see here. Anyway, I really appreciate you being here to all of you. Yeah, it was a good confab tonight. Cryptid Hunters. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking to Barry, listening to him talk. And we'll definitely have him back. We'll do some more of that, and I will be lining up some other guests in the future. And I really appreciate you all being here tonight, okay? And your support means a lot to me. And we will definitely looking forward to Friday night when we'll all join together on paranormal point of view. Go in search of the vampire's grave. I'm gonna talk about an incident I never have talked about before on any podcast or anything. I've never told anyone about when I went looking for a vampire's grave. I'll tell you the very strange story about that Friday night. Okay, so hang in there, everyone, with us, and be back again. That'll be Friday night at 8 o'clock p.m. If you haven't subscribed, please do so to the channel tonight, to Hunting the Shadows podcast channel, and come back and show us more support again. I really appreciate you all being here, and I hope you have a fantastic week, what's left of it, as we going on into the weekend. And remember what I always say, veritas indicatus. That's truth and justice. That's what we look for in the world today. That's what we've got to hold on to, the truth and the justice and the light. Okay, because we don't want to go into the darkness. We don't want the darkness to win in this situation. Absolutely. We want to hold on to the light and to the truth, no matter what. That's what's it. And that's that unified front we've got to work on. Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you all being here tonight. God bless you all until we get together again. Vaya con Dios, and embrace the mystery.
Hunting the Shadows.